wake up and be alive. Get ready and get on the road, begin to drive. 5 till 8, 100 years to my lunch break. Then I try to keep my social life 1 till 4 in overdrive. Overdrive. Tell me why misery slows time, but when I'm happy, feeling great, time accelerates. Tell me too why life seems to punish you with work and work and work and no play. Burn it burns, it burns years away. But it'll be my time to make time. Treat yourself your biggest crime. Step into your spotlight with a big one to make you. You gotta make life my time to make time. Treat yourself your biggest crime. Step into your spotlight with a big one to make you. You gotta make life. You gotta make your life. Seems a shame. Life is such a dirty game. Lucky all the chosen few doing what they wanna do. But stay your course. Hey, dues will open doors and you'll get back what you put in. Times 10. You better find time to make time. Treat yourself your biggest crime. Step into your spotlight with your ain't gonna make you. You gotta make life. Find time to make time. Treat yourself your biggest crime. Step into your spotlight with your ain't gonna make you. You gotta make life. I will save face. Find a way out of the rat race. Make the most of all my days before they slip away. Yeah, before they slip away. Before they slip away. Don't let them slip away. Don't let them slip away. Yourself your biggest crime. Step into your spotlight, cause it ain't gonna make you. You gotta make life. Find time to make time. Cheating yourself your biggest crime. Step into your spotlight, cause it ain't gonna make you. You gotta make life. Tell me why to make time. Cheating yourself your biggest crime. But when I'm happy, feeling great, cause it ain't gonna make me. You gotta make life. Find time to make time. Cheating yourself your biggest crime. Work and work and work, but don't play. Burn it burns, it burns. You gotta make life. You gotta make life. Life ain't gonna make you. You gotta make your life. Life ain't gonna make you. No, you gotta make your life ain't gonna make you. You gotta make life. You gotta make life. You gotta make life. You gotta make your life. You gotta make life. You gotta make your life. You gotta make life. You gotta make your life. Cheating yourself your biggest crime. Step into your spotlight, cause it ain't gonna make you. You gotta make life.
Hey folks, it's Bill Meeks. I'm looking a little yellow here. It's weird, I checked the camera beforehand, but welcome to the first episode of Building Dreams. A fantastic series where I'm going to show you how I'm bringing my dreams to life using the latest AI tools. I want to, right up top here, I want to thank Brett Cain, Brett Cain, one of my best friends who passed away last year, for that song that I played right at the beginning, Make Life. That's kind of what I'm going to be doing with this project, is making life, and it's really a song about following your dreams and pushing forward, despite, any sort of adversity. So I thought it was really appropriate to play for this one. Plus, I met him in Wheeling, West Virginia, which is a town I'm going to be talking about very, very soon. I see Deborah Kerr in the chat room there. Hello, Deborah. Nice to see you. She's worked with me on stuff like The Fakest before, so I think she's going to be involved with this project, which is really cool. And she really liked Brett's song too, which is cool. Before I get started, I also want to thank Streann Studio for agreeing to transfer their sponsorship of my old show, Where I'm From, to this new one, Building Dreams. It's really great. It's going to give me a little bit of a financial stockpile to help pay people who are helping me with this, and it really just kind of legitimizes it. Streann Studio is a great project for live streaming like I'm doing right now. I'm going to play an ad for them in a little bit, but if you want to check them out, go to everlyheights.tv and then click on the Streann Studio banner, and then that way I get a little credit too. All right, so Everly Heights, let me find the right thing here. Boom. Okay. Building Dreams, welcome to Everly Heights. So, are you curious about the creative process behind bringing a fictional world to life? Do you want to see how generative AI can be used as a tool to power original artistic projects? Then you're in the right place. In this series, I'll be sharing my creative process every step of the way and showing you how I'm using products like Stable Diffusion, AI voice cloning, and Adobe Character Animator to bring Everly Heights to life as a collection of animated shows and movies. I'm really excited about it. This is a project I've been working on. I started it about 6 months into the pandemic, writing these scripts, and it's been a series of writing and revising and writing and revising, and then coming up with a new idea for a new script set in the same universe and writing that one. And finally, after all that time, I'm ready to kick this off. So I'm very, very excited about it. Okay, so... All right, so Everly Heights is based on my hometown of... Oh, I don't think this is going. Hold on. There we go. There. Everly Heights is based on my hometown of Wheeling, West Virginia, which you can see right here. It's a steel town. There's a steel mill probably about 20 miles up the Ohio River in Wellsburg, where most of the industry was centered, and most of the money was centered too, because a lot of people worked there, including my friend Brett's dad, actually, that played that song earlier. It's sort of hold on, let me see if I can find, there we go. Yeah, and it's based on Wheeling, West Virginia, and like I said, Wheeling's a small town that's full of contradictions. It's both a formal industrial hub, like I said, those steel mills, and it's a place of natural beauty, with the Ohio River winding through the town. Growing up in Wheeling gave me a unique perspective on life, and I want to capture the spirit of the town where I grew up, in my Everly Heights universe. Little trivia, I used to have a band called Classic Tragic Hero, and we shot a music video where I jumped into that Ohio River, which of course, all those steel mills I was talking about dump all their sludge into, so I'm probably going to die soon. It's just a matter of time, really. But it's a good town overall. So let's see here. So Everly Heights is where nostalgia chronically clashes against the future, and characters grapple with the changing world around them and their identity in it, from the nostalgic 90s all the way up to the modern day. Nostalgia has always been a very creative concern of mine, mainly because I'm pretty nostalgic myself. And, as a lot of people label me as a total geek, and that means, yeah, I'm watching, 80s Saturday morning cartoons in my spare time. So I have a complicated relationship with nostalgia. So all these stories that I've set in the Everly Heights universe are sort of based around nostalgia and our relationship to it, and whether our dependence on nostalgia is a good thing or a bad thing. Hold on, let me make sure I'm here, right? Cool. Now, in a bid to push myself into the future while I'm working on this project, I'm going to show you how I'm harnessing cutting-edge AI and animation technology so you can bring your own dreams to life. Whether it's using Stable Diffusion to Whether it's using Stable Diffusion to generate unique characters, including full character turnarounds like you see here. You'll also see some odd, freakish characters to the left here. Some of them came out a little funky. Training an AI art model is a very fine-tuned thing, we'll say. And I'm going to be taking you through how I've been fine-tuning those results you see on the left here to come up with character sheets that are ready to go into Character Animator, like you see on the right here. That's Bernie Love. You'll see a bit of an older version of him later. It's really exciting because, you know, I've tried to do animated series before. Like I tried to do my comedy podcast series, The Fakest. Originally, the idea for that was an animated series in Adobe Character Animator, because that was a very new program at the time. Rig puppets in Character Animator and animate them. And I didn't have the bandwidth because I had a full-time gig at Hearst Television at the time. So it became an audio podcast, but I always sort of held on to this kernel of an idea. And I was like, what can I do to make that bandwidth situation less powerful over me? And at first I did in Adobe Illustrator, I created sort of a character maker Illustrator file with hundreds and hundreds of various body parts, eyes, nose, mouths, hair, outfits, everything that I designed myself, that I thought I could really quickly jump in here, slap something together that's 90% of what I want, and then tweak it the rest of the way. And that was a good idea at the time, but things like Stable Diffusion have shown up, and they're showing me that there's a better way to create original characters that I can use in my original projects. Much more efficient way, too. So I'm really excited about going through all this with you. It's going to be a blast. It's going to be a blast. I see Deborah Kerr in the chat room there. Deborah Kerr was instrumental in that earlier project, The Fakest. So I'm really excited she's going to be involved in this new version coming up here. All right, and in addition to characters, I've also been designing custom sets using this technology. I'm going to get into detail here, in the next couple episodes of Building Dreams. But what I did was I took some classic TV and movie sets that we all know and we all love, things like the living room set from All to the Family, or those 90s sitcoms, since so many stories are set in the 90s, like Step by Step and Full House. And I messed around with them, edited them, sort of gave them an illustrated look, and then I trained a model using those. And you can see some of those results here. It allows me to generate commonplaces like a coffee shop like you see here, or a family living room, or the coffee shop you see here. Sorry, I thought that one was up before. Or even, a deck on a futuristic spaceship, all in the same style as the characters that my character model is generating. I'll also be training a prop. I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to be training a prop model live on the stream to generate turnarounds of objects I'll need to animate characters, I don't know, calling on a cell phone or smoking a cigarette or throwing a ball. I'll be generating all of those inside Stable Diffusion with a custom model I'm going to build here on the stream. Things like telephones and guns and whatnot. It's really exciting, really exciting. And whether it's using Stable Diffusion to generate unique characters and settings, AI voice cloning to create authentic sounding parody characters, or Adobe Character Animator to bring it all to life, like I did in my first test with this workflow earlier this year. This is something I did for my Where I'm Now Defunct, Where I'm From podcast called Love at Night with Bernie Love, where I used the basic workflow, the character model generator that I've created for Stable Diffusion with Adobe Character Animator and AI voice cloning to change my voice into a voice that sounds a bit more like Bernie Love. It was a really fun experiment. I really enjoyed doing it, and I'll go ahead and play a little clip of it for you right now.
Welcome to Love at Night with Bernie Love, where we give you advice about any of the problems you have in your life. First off, we have Michael, a construction worker from Milwaukee, who says he has a problem with Pat's blue ribbon. Michael, you're on the line with Bernie Loves.
Hey, Bernie, thanks for having me. Real happy to be here. Oh, boy, let me tell you what, I got some big issues here with Pabst Blue Ribbon, all right?
That's what I hear.
And I'm wondering if you can...
Oh, and there we go. That's the end of the clip. I just want to say that, these were some of my first tests with this technology, so the results aren't perfect. The lip sync's a little off here or there, but I think it was promising enough to make me head way down this road, because I'm like, no, this is perfect. This is what we're going to do. And through watching Building Dreams here, you're going to see me refine these products that I created to do Bernie Love into something that I can use to make a really professional animated series, movie, all that kind of stuff. I'm hoping that this tool will help me bring these personal, ambitious, and heartfelt stories to life in a way that connects with the audience. So we'll see, I guess. All right, so let's see here. So if you're interested in seeing this creative process behind Everly Heights and learning how to use the AI tools I've created for original artistic projects, then make sure to subscribe to my channel and follow me on my journey. My channel on YouTube is @BillMeeksLA. If you're seeing this, you're probably already subscribed. If you want to get more involved on the creative end, I'm building a community of artists to help me with it. So if you're a voice actor, a writer, a musician, an artist, or just love playing around with all this new AI art technology, sign up for the list over at everlyheights.tv, and I'll be in touch very soon with next steps. So just go over to everlyheights.tv on the web and scroll down to the bottom of the page where you'll be able to fill in this Google form, and you'll get on the list and in my spreadsheet, so I know what to do. If you fill this out, like I said, I'm probably going to be in touch with everyone who's reached out since August when I first set this up in the next week or two. And if you're from Wheeling, or if you have a connection to the town, I'd love to hear from you. You can shoot me an email at billmeeks@everlyheights.tv. And we can bounce ideas off each other. If you want to sponsor some of this content, like my sponsor Streann Studio is doing, they see the value in it, maybe you do too. billmeeks@everlyheights.tv. Let's work together to create something truly special. And now, speaking of sponsors, I'm going to go ahead and play a quick sponsor read from my sponsor, Streann Studio. I love you guys. Thank you so much for supporting this. This is the ad read from my old show, Where I'm From, but I'm going to do a new, fresh ad read with animated characters for you because I have the tools, right? So watch this, and then we'll be right back to dive into the stories and tell you more about Everly Heights. Where I'm From is brought to you by Streann Studio. That's Streann Studio, the web app that puts you in charge of the live show. Streann Studio allows you to take your streaming game to the next level by allowing you to stream to multiple platforms at once. If you want to go to Twitch, if you want to go to YouTube, if you want to go to a website that isn't supported even, you can stream to all of those platforms at once, get feedback from your audience, and most importantly, it puts you in control of the show. Now, Streann Studio has several packages that work for just about any type of broadcaster. From the free plan, where you can stream with a watermark, all the way up to the gold plan, where you can have up to 8 guests. You can stream to as many social platforms as you want. You can get a web link to share your show with external audiences, and you can even get an iframe so you can embed your live stream show directly into your website. Hey, I love Streann Studio so much, I'm using it to produce this show. I want to thank Streann Studio for supporting Where I'm From, and you can give this fantastic software a spin and support Where I'm From at the same time. Just head over to our website at billmeeks.com/whereimfrom and click on the Streann Studio banner so they know we sent you their way. And obviously, if you want to, you can go ahead and connect to it over at everlyheights.tv. Same banners there, same link, everything. And like I said, my lovely sponsors at Streann Studio, I'm going to be getting a new animated ad, cut together for you guys very, very soon. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show. All right, so now I guess it's back to the presentation here and the stories. So these stories are all a little piece of me, right? Like I think any writer will say that the stories that they write, there's a lot of them inside of it. And that's very true for these stories too. I've written 7 stories in the Everly Heights universe, 4 TV pilots, and 3 movie scripts. Now we'll go through these in chronological order, starting with Nosloo the Great, set in 1994. And here comes Nosloo. Now, Nosloo, I kind of pitch it as Alf in the multiverse. And it's based on my experiences keeping a secret from somebody I cared about and how it nearly destroyed me inside. What a secret can do to your mental health too, right? So I'll go ahead and read the description here from the slide I have up on the screen. Married life meets the multiverse. Jim Colvin is a legendary agent for the WEIRDE task force, weaken and eradicate interdimensional enemies. And now he wants to start a new life with Ramona. Only one problem, his instincts say she's cheating on him. Is Ramona being unfaithful, or is Jim projecting his lies about what he really does for a living onto his new bride? To build trust, Jim brings his work home with him. Unfortunately, his work involves a dark troll wizard from another dimension locked in an eternal struggle with the Dark Lord Habaticus. Will she still love Jim after he introduces her to Nosloo the Great? So, like I said, a lot of inspiration from Alf in this one. I've always been a big fan of Alf, but I like to think it's saying something a bit more than Alf did too. And, it really harkens back to a grand tradition in sitcoms, and that's the We've Got a Secret sitcom. Now, there's a lot of sitcoms that sort of fall into this trope. Bewitched is one. A more recent one is Resident Alien, I Dream of Jeannie. These stories often reflect and comment on issues we all face. Alf was a sitcom about a family with a good reason to distrust the ever-expanding military-industrial complex. The witches in Bewitched are a metaphor for the gay experience in the 1960s. Now, Nosloo the Great embraces this grand tradition to explore why we keep secrets, why we double down when caught in a lie, and how honesty supports our relationships, but how lies can also tear them apart. Now, I don't think it's any secret here. Nosloo the Great was very much inspired by Alf. If you go and take a look at the character sheets I have up at EverlyHeights.tv, you'll even see that he bears a passing resemblance to Alf. I always loved Alf growing up. I know it's kind of a crappy 80s sitcom, maybe one of the crappiest, but I had a special place in my heart for it. I did always have one problem with it though. And that's that it felt like the Tanners didn't have any real personal stakes in protecting their secrets. I mean, obviously over the seasons, they learn to love Alf and he becomes a part of the family. But at the end of the day, as we see in the series finale for Alf, if the government ever finds out about Alf and comes and takes him away, the Tanners pretty much just go back to their regular lives. There might be some legal proceedings, but there's not that big of a stake. So in Nosloo, Jim's career and his marriage are constantly on the line if the truth comes out. It's pitting Jim and Nosloo against the weirdy organization that he works for, his new wife, and really the world. So hopefully that ups the personal stakes. And I also put What If here, the Marvel series What If, as an inspiration because I've always loved the multiverse. And the agents of weird will travel to new dimensions and face new threats every episode. From pirate planets to sentient plants, our imaginative settings and characters are as infinite as the multiverse. And that's what's really fun about this one, is opening it up to being set in an organization that explores the multiverse. You can do any kind of story you want. We can do, like I said, a pirate story, a magic story. We can do, it's set in the 90s, but we could do one that flashes forward to a more like 2020s world, for example, or back to a 60s world. And at the same, all the while, playing with this idea of this sort of alpha male Jim character, the main character, trying to find his place in the world with this secret he has to carry on his shoulders. So Nosloo is really fun. I'm really looking forward to Nosloo. That is not the one we're going with. I will tell you which one we're going to go with for our first production at the end of this presentation. All right, so next up is another one I really love, and it's been well received by people too. It's called Very Special, and obviously this is a bit of a take on a family ties scenario, you could say. It's a sitcom where the situation changes. This started out for me as when I was involved in the Orlando improv scene a few years ago. I was thinking about pitching a show to some of the theaters I worked with called Very Special, where we would start out the setup for Family Ties, the basic setup for Family Ties, you know, 2 parents that are kind of hippies, 3 kids, one of them's a conservative. And every week we would improv a sitcom, and something major about the entire situation would change within that week. And then we'd carry that change over to the next week's show of Very Special. Obviously, I moved away from Orlando. I'm not quite as connected to improv scenes as I used to be. So I decided to write a script from it. And this was, I think, this was the second Everly Heights script I wrote. And the first one that sort of told me, yeah, that's what we want to do. We want to do this great connected universe. And the gimmick is pretty much the same. You know, every episode, something major is going to happen to make the situation change forever. As much of as a love letter to sitcoms, as a Very Special is as much a love letter to sitcoms as it is a rebellion against them. Something changes forever every episode, which means the stakes are as high as the parents. Yeah, there are a couple of stoners in this one. We start at a pseudo 90s Family Ties, but by the end of the episode, you'll realize this one has potential to go anywhere and do anything. I'll also say that Nosloo the Great, that I talked about in the last script, this is where he got his start. Jim Colvin is the Special's next door neighbor. So that's an example of the way that these stories are going to connect overall. I think I actually, on every stories page over at everlyheights.tv, I have a breakdown of all of the connections, the characters, the settings between all the scripts for every script. So if you want to dig in and find out how this whole big spider web of a universe makes sense, it's all over there at everlyheights.tv. So Very Special, not only was it the first one I was like, no, this is a universe, and I was really excited about writing it, but it was also the first one to receive, you know, some accolades from various corners of the web. For example, it was a semi-finalist in the 2021 Screencraft Screenwriting Fellowship. It was a quarterfinalist in the 2021 Screencraft Comedy Competition, and it was a quarterfinalist in the Script Lab TSL Free Screenplay Contest. I believe it also was a quarterfinalist in, what is it? Not Bluetooth, not Blue Hat. There's another, it's run by Philip Seymour Hoffman's brother. I can't remember the name of it, but Very Special kind of placed there too. And like I said, you know, this idea came to me as sort of an inspiration based on all of the improv I was doing in Orlando. So I like to call this a long-form sitcom. Now, Very Special uses the Herald long-form improv structure to tell its story. It's a format that lends itself to sitcoms, so much so that the USB Improv Theater in NYC ran a successful show called Improvised Seinfeld, where they took a Herald, stuck in the Seinfeld characters, and basically were generating a new episode of Seinfeld every week on their show, which is also kind of where I got inspired to do Very Special from. Very Special embraces this strategy to shake up the show and characters in big ways every week while still feeling organic. Like I said, the important thing for every episode of Very Special is that there's a capital B big change that completely rocks the foundation of the story. Deborah Kerr over in the chat room says, this one subverts the sitcom stability. And yeah, that's exactly the point. You never know which character is going to die or change their thing or whatever throughout the story. I really love this one. I think it's a lot of fun. And like I said, you know, it was kind of inspired in a lot of ways, at least the initial start of it, by the old sitcom Family Ties. The specials are modeled on the Keatons from Family Ties. I mean, it's like the parents who were sort of like artsy-fartsy liberals, the son who's a staunch conservative, the daughter who, well, in the first episode, actually, the daughter is kind of tries to be a popular girl and then decides to become, it's basically, I always describe it to people, she starts out wanting to be Mallory from Family Ties, an 80s character, and she ends up in this show set in the 90s. So she starts as Mallory from Family Ties and by the end of the episode, she's Daria from MTV's Daria, which is kind of a fun dynamic to play with. Yeah, and I will say that WandaVision is also kind of an inspiration here, because the idea is for each season to sort of... By the way, I came up with this idea before WandaVision, but each season will sort of honor the decade sitcoms. So, you know, the first season is going to be based on 90s. Then the second season is going to be based on 2000s. Third season is going to be based on 2010s into the modern day. And we'll have like time jumps in between those two, you know, assuming it goes to series. That's kind of the general idea. So I really like Very Special. I think it's a very special one. It's also had some accolades that I did not include in this presentation, so I don't want to say anything off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it was also in that, that Screenwriting Fellowship. I think it was a semi-finalist. So a lot of good fun, All right, next up is one that I wrote originally as a Pen 15 spec script for a screenwriting fellowship, but I put enough of my personal story into it that I decided to rewrite it into an original pilot that includes several characters from the wider Everly Heights universe. So Zoo of Zero Tolerance. It's all based on my experiences making ZZT games back in the 90s. What happens when friends outgrow their friendship? Tina Infantino and Ken Sacco have been best friends since first grade, but they're growing apart as middle school comes to a close. Ken is obsessed with space and video games. Tina is focused on popular music and making a scene. When they enter a contest to go to space camp and Tina wins, Ken makes a computer game to show Tina how he really feels. When the video game travels across the internet and Tina discovers it, will their friendship fall apart? Will it? Will it not? Who knows? You'll have to read the script to find out up at Everly Heights TV. And like I said, this one is pure 90s, authentically 90s, and it's inspired by several stories from my real life. For one, when I was 11 or 12 years old, I wanted to go to space camp so bad. And our local grocery store, Respecs Food Mart, had a contest to send people to space camp. And I was really, really excited about it, obviously. And so I went and I stole, I think, 4 or 5 pads of entry forms, took them home, filled them all out with my name on it, spent 2 or 3 days doing this, and then took them all back down, dropped them in the box. Now, one day I was out, and when I got back, my mom was like, "Oh, somebody called for you." And I was like, "Who called for me?" She was like, "I don't know. I didn't take a number." I looked on her caller ID, cross-referenced it with the phone book. It was Respecs Food Mart. It was them calling to let me know I had won the contest. And unfortunately, I never got a hold of them again. I did get a hold of them again, but when I did get a hold of them, they told me they had waited like an hour and then they had moved on to the second person on the list. So I never did get to go to space camp, which is a shame. It's a real shame. Around the same time, when I was 13, I founded Ultraware. I mostly made games using a game creation system made by Epic Mega Games, now Epic Games of Fortnite fame, called ZZT. You'll see one of them here on your screen. That's Mario Brothers version 2.0. So my early creative life for about 2 years, this was it, man. Making ZZT games, running my ZZT company, trying to get stuff going. Eventually, I went to high school. Those things sort of fell away. Also, you know, technology picked up and ZZT kind of fell out of favor. So I never really went anywhere with it, but I always feel like that was my first real creative spark as a creator. And my first time I was like, you know what? If no one's going to let me do this, I'm going to do it myself, which is the exact kind of ethos I'm bringing to this Everly Heights project, I hope. So, you know, it's a love letter to ZZT. It's a love letter to my disappointment not getting to go to space camp. And like I said, Zoo of Zero Tolerance is based a lot on Pen 15 because it originally started as a Pen 15 spec script for the Nickelodeon Writing Fellowship, I believe. But I like the story so much and I put so much of myself into it that I decided to adapt it into an Everly Heights story. One of the cool things about it, though, is that by transitive property, there's a character named Tina Infantino that appears in the last Everly Heights script, Curtain Call, that we'll talk about in a little bit, that I realized would really fit into this story as to one of the main characters. So Tina from this will eventually show up in Curtain Call later down the line. And I also mentioned My Girl here as an inspiration for Zoo of Zero Tolerance, because Ken and Tina's deep platonic friendship in the script is inspired by Veda and Thomas J's friendship in the classic 90s film My Girl, which has always been one of my favorites. Makes me cry every time you see him in that casket. Spoilers for a 20, 30-year-old movie there. All right, now, and we're going through the 90s. This one's set about 1997. Now we're hitting 1999, the prime time of my teenage and punk rock years, with the movie Kids Like Us, pop punk in a small town. Set in a small town with a thriving local music scene, Kids Like Us follows a group of young punks coming to terms with growing up. In the tradition of 90s ensemble teen comedies, Kids Like Us tells the story of the day a group of friends decide what the hell they want to do with their lives. Who will stay in town working at the coffee shop for minimum wage? Will any of them escape the pull of the Everly Heights magnet? By the end of the day, every character in this found family of punk rockers will make decisions that will impact the rest of their lives. Now, this is a punk rock long-form improv fight fest. It's based on my years growing up as a young punk in Wheeling. There are several characters in here that are literally one-to-one translations of people I knew growing up, like Postal, for example. The skinhead who's a sharp, and he's if you don't know, there's a sect of skinheads, because most people think skinhead equals racist. The original skinheads became the sharps, which is skinheads against racial prejudice, who are like anti-racist skinheads, which I always thought was a really fun dynamic. So I included that character in this. There's a lot of fun in here, a lot of connections to other Everly Heights stories. This is a very realistic script, but Nosloo The Great actually does appear in this one, which is kind of fun. Now, like I said, this story is all about coming of age in the 90s. It's really based on the summer between my senior year and my first time moving out to Los Angeles, where we would hang out at this coffee shop called the Wheeling Coffee Shop. In this, it's called the Coffee Shop with a K. But, me and my punk friends, we would meet up there every day around lunchtime, hang out to sometime between 5 and 7 p.m., then go to a punk rock show, then go and drink on a bridge down by the college until like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, go to bed, wake up about 9 or 10 o'clock, do it all again the next day. You never knew what was going to happen, what sort of shenanigans you were going to get into, where you would end up, what you would end up drinking or imbibing. It was a wild time, as most times with 18-year-olds are, but it's a time I remember very fondly, and a time that I think really informed who I am as a person. So I do want to stress, too, what I did with this. This originally started as a TV pilot called The Coffee Shop, which was meant to be an anthology series where every story started at the coffee shop in Everly Heights. After going through it and finding how much people like the Nat character, I realized, no, this is like its own thing. This is its own story. So I expanded it out to a film using the Herald improv format that I used to write Very Special and the original Coffee Shop script. It's a really strong format. Of course, with this story being so expansive and really about the community, the punk rock community in Everly Heights, there's a lot of characters. So the way I planned it out is I took and I wrote 3 different heralds, one for Nat's story, one for the punk rock kids at the show, and one for the coffee shop. And then I sort of layered those in between each other. And it's a really interesting process. I have all the documentation. I'm going to go through it in a future video. Suffice it to say, this movie is kind of 3 heralds mashed up into one. A lot of fun, a lot of punk rock, a lot of original music. Their lyrics for original music. Don't have the music for the original music yet. But that's part of the reason I need your help. EverlyHeights.tv to sign up. Now, this one is very much based on the 90s indie film movement. I think it probably bears the closest resemblance to Empire Records. Kids Like Us takes place over the course of one day, like a lot of those movies. And, it's about all these young kids with attitude. Then I also bring up Clerks, because Clerks is another one that's set compact in one day about a tight group of friends. And actually the original idea for the coffee shop anthology series was sort of like, what if Clerks, but more? What if we were with the clerks all the time and they worked at a coffee shop instead? Because so 90s, right? But Kids Like Us is a lot of fun. I will say too that there's a lot in there for the LGBTQ community, because Nat's Nat, the main character, her main conflict, and she's based on a girl I grew up with, is about realizing she's a lesbian and realizing her father, who also happens to be a gangster in town, does not like that too much. And it kind of sets up their conflict throughout the story. So I really love Kids Like Us. Unfortunately, it's not the one we're going to be making first, but I'm going to tell you about that one here in a few minutes. All right, we're getting towards the end here. And this one, I will say, I sent out a survey to people last summer about ones they liked, and this one was a big favorite, which is really heartening because it's also the one that's probably the most personal story out of all of these. And not just because it's about a wannabe screenwriter like me. I included several aspects of my life in this script. For one, the main character, Jeremy's relationship to his dad, who was a little abusive, which is something I struggled with growing up. Dogboy. Dogboy is a superhero I wrote a series of books for over a number of years that is sort of like the property that the main character is writing about in this story. There's also a lot in this from my first, second, and third moves to LA, because I wrote this right after we moved here last summer for the third time. So, a lot of those feelings of like, is this the right move? How do I figure this out? How did I get here? All this stuff comes into it. And, Jeremy's ambitions to make something truly original and something that really talks about what he is something, obviously, with this project, I'm very concerned about personally. So the plot of this story is basically a fan gets hired to work on his favorite show. Jeremy Hahn is the host of Greetings from Cultus City. You'll know, if you're a fan of my former podcast, you'll notice a reference there. A fan podcast devoted to the short-lived syndicated series Dogboy Adventures. When a viral video puts him on the radar of a production company working on the Dogboy reboot, he's whisked away to Hollywood on a madcap adventure to defend his favorite show from revamped characters and executive meddling. I mean, we all have suffered this, right? They're rebooting my favorite show. Oh, and they changed everything about it. Imagine if you were in the room where they were making those decisions. So basically the conflict comes down to Jeremy wants to do a continuation, finally a final season of Dogboy Adventures, while his boss, Lily, wants to reboot the property, with all the trappings that we've seen in reboots over the past several years coming into play. Can Jeremy convince the Hollywood system to produce a final season by fans, for fans? I really love this one. Like I said, if you want my heart out on the page, Fanboy is really it. I've never really identified as a fanboy necessarily, but a lot of people identify me as a fanboy. And a lot of times that feels like it's a diminutive, right? Like, oh, he's just a fanboy. In fact, this was originally called Just a Fanboy. So I wanted to kind of get into the real emotional reasons why somebody might be obsessed with the past and obsessed with their favorite properties and want to bring the past back. And like I said, it's just such a personal story. Like, I'll say too that Brother Joseph, the character that's Jeremy's roommates in this, is very much based on my friend Brett Cain, whose music you heard at the top of this stream, who passed away right before I started writing this. And so in a lot of ways, writing this, it was a really nice way to kind of revisit a lot of what we went through together when I lived out here with him back in the early 2000s. One story the wildest story from my time being a roadie for Brett did not make the cut, but a lot of stuff did. And, so there's a lot of that in there. And like I said, Jeremy's relationship to his abusive father. I grew up in an abusive household, and I'm trying to think of how to say this. I grew up in an abusive household and had a very complicated relationship with my stepfather, who, as much as Jeremy's stepfather hates that he likes Dogboy, my stepfather hated that I liked theater and media creation. He wanted me to, put together mobile homes like him or work on cars like him. And the artistic aspirations I had and the computer aspirations I have, he always said they were going nowhere. And, I've been estranged from most of my family who still live in Wheeling for a number of years. But this gave me a really good opportunity to sort of like rip open those fresh wounds. Because like I said, that news came down as I was writing the outline for this. Sort of open up those fresh wounds and explore, how that relationship makes me feel. And is there anything I can do to make myself feel like that relationship went okay, even though I'm the one who broke off contact, now that I can't fix that relationship ever, right? So, it's a very personal story. And it's also, I will say that it got the second most votes from people, which really makes me want to do this one first. But I think it'd be better if we start with something a little more short and self-contained, because like I said, this is a film script before we move forward with Fanboy. But I really do love Fanboy. Now, like I said, this is a story 16 years in the making. I wrote it right after we moved back here to LA. When I first lived out here in Los Angeles back in the early 2000s, I actually had a script optioned by a production company out here called The Fantabulous Adventure of Dogboy. So they optioned it and they never did anything with it, but it was kind of tied up for about 2 years. Meanwhile, I moved back east. I reconnected with my wife. We got married, had kids, ended up back east. I kind of let the screenwriting aspirations float away, but I still love Dogboy, right? So, when the self-publishing boom was really starting, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take advantage of that. Sorry, I'm just checking the time here to make sure I have time. I'm really going to take advantage of that. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take that Dogboy movie script I wrote, and I'm going to translate it into a self-published novel, which became Dogboy, Den of Thieves. I ended up writing 5 books in the Dogboy series. I think 5 books, 4 or 5 books in the Dogboy series, all told. And it was supposed to end with Dogboy Willowwood. But then I got a new job and I kind of like floated away from the self-publishing stuff, and I never finished it. And every few months, without fail, some fan of the original book series is like, when are you going to do the last book in the Dogboy series? We have to find out what happened with Dogboy and Willowwood and all this stuff. And so I was like, why don't I kill 2 birds with 1 stone? I'll tell this really personal story about Hollywood reboots, and I'll also finish up the Dogboy story. So if you were ever a fan of my Dogboy books, within this screenplay, you'll find out how the story ends. I'll say that much. There used to be a lot more of it in there. I cut probably 70 or 80 pages out of it over the course of rewrites. But you will get a general idea of how the story was supposed to wrap up. So if you were a fan of Dogboy, go ahead and read Fanboy and you'll get your answers. As far as inspirations, this is in the same vein as things like The Disaster Artist, where it's a movie about making movies and Hollywood tropes and the sort of wackiness that can go on behind the scenes. And I'll also bring up State and Maine, which is another favorite of mine, that also has that sort of like a movie about making a movie. This is a movie about making a reboot of your favorite TV show from the 90s. So it's a lot of fun, and a lot of people on the mailing list liked it too. Unfortunately, it didn't quite make it. I'm going to tell you which one's going to be our first project here in a few minutes, but this one, Fanboy, is definitely number 2 on the list. All right, so next up, and this is the first Everly Heights script I wrote. It's called The Last Chance Detective Agency. The basic idea of this one is, what if Encyclopedia Brown never grew up? Can a middle-aged boy detective finally grow up? Danny Chance was a famous kid detective in the 90s. He even got interviewed in Parade magazine. Decades later, Danny's still running a detective agency out of his dad's garage, and the old man has had about enough of it. When his old partner Melody shows back up, she makes it her mission to pull Danny kicking and screaming into adulthood. But what starts as a well-meaning charade becomes deadly serious when their old bully Dick Armstrong is murdered. Together, they'll unravel a conspiracy that stretches from the Quaker Intercourse Mafia to the local police department and beyond. So again, this is Encyclopedia Brown all grown up, but he never really moved on. I actually wrote this, and then maybe about 3 or 4 months later, an indie film came out called The Kid Detective, which sort of explores similar subject matter, but I think I have my own original take on it. So I think it'll be, I think it sets itself apart from that one. And by the time this will go into production, that movie will be a distant memory anyway. So I'm not terribly worried about it. Now this one got a lot of critical acclaim too. It was a second rounder in the 2021 Austin Film Festival. It was a quarter finalist in the 2021 Screencraft Comedy Competition, and it was a quarter finalist in the 2021 Screencraft TV Pilot Competition. I'd love to take this one to series, but I feel like it's the wrong one to start with because it's so action heavy, and the tools I'm building right now, they're going to be great for, a sitcom or something that could be performed on stage. Less so for big action sequences. We'll get there, but I want to do a test project first before I try something that ambitious. But I really love Danny Chance. And like I said, The Last Chance Detective Agency is inspired a lot by Encyclopedia Brown. He's always one of my favorites. Him and Danny Dunn, and sort of those kids operating in an adult job and being more successful at it than any adult in their town idea. I kind of wanted to play with that. And you'll notice a lot of similarities, like Dick Armstrong that I mentioned in the description. He's basically Bugs Meany. Danny Chance and Melody Trainer, they're basically Encyclopedia Brown and his friend Sally. But again, I tried to take a familiar starting point and go somewhere completely wacky and weird with it. I'll also say, as far as the vibe is concerned, I was inspired a lot by the HBO series Barry that's coming back for its final season very soon. It's sort of like, I really like the irreverent, dark, violent humor mashup going on in Barry, and it was definitely an inspiration for tone and nothing else for The Last Chance Detective Agency. All right, and we're here for the last one. This one is bonkers. It's called Curtain Call. This is basically the Avengers Endgame of the MCU. The Meeks Cinematic Universe. Characters from throughout the stories, all of the scripts I've already discussed, as well as several new characters, become entangled in several plots to either destroy or save Cornerstone Theater. Cornerstone Theater, a very central location in Everly Heights. It's where Michael Special works. It's where Nat worked when she was a teenager from Kids Like Us, and she shows up here too. But this is really sort of my love letter to what the arts means to a town. And it's Everly Heights, home of the arts. We had to get there eventually, right? So it's a ton of fun. This is a very complex script with a lot of characters, but I think with my latest rewrite, it really, really works. Now, like I said, this script's all about my love of theater. Everly Heights, like I said, is based on Wheeling, West Virginia, and Cornerstone Theater is based on the original theater where I got my start, which is Towngate Theater in downtown Wheeling, well, Center Market, Wheeling, West Virginia. I started out there. I got 3 lines in the children's hour as the grocery boy who had to be like, this town hates lesbians like you two teachers are. And that was kind of the function of the story. But basically, I sat around in the light booth with my girlfriend for 2 acts, and the third act I would come out for 10 minutes, and then I was done. So it was a really nice, easy breezy pathway into theater. But I kept doing theater at Towngate after that in their Parcel Player summer series, including Under Milkwood, which there's a lot of Under Milkwood and Our Town in this script, which I'll get to in a minute. Anyway, Wheeling, West Virginia is not the most artistic town in the world, not the most friendly to artists in the world, but doing plays at Towngate and at my high school after that, and at Towngate again after that, it was really the first time it felt like home to me, and I felt like I was, I belonged and I was doing something that mattered. Getting my picture in the paper as Professor Plum in Clue the Musical, stuff like that. So I really wanted to honor what a community theater can mean to a community. And I also, considering Everly Heights starts in the 90s as a town that's based around the arts, and the entire local economy is based around the arts, to show that same town after the arts and the funding for the arts have fallen away. Kind of like how in Wheeling, it was built on steel money and steel industry money, and then the steel industry went away, and what are you left with, right? So this one is another script that I wrote based on a long form improv format. In this case, that format is called The Slacker. The Slacker is a really nice little improv format that is inspired by the 90s indie film Slacker, which inspired Kevin Smith to make Clerks, by the way. And this is basically you have one scene where 2 characters meet. You have another scene where one of those characters and another character meet. Then that character goes back to the original character. Then the original character goes off to another character. And then you move forward, swapping out characters every scene. And that's kind of the structure I designed to write this screenplay. So there's a lot of characters, a lot of interconnecting plot lines. It's very complex, and a lot of the feedback I got over the first year or so of drafting it was, this is too complex. There's too many characters. I think I've finally simplified it down enough to where, it's relatively understandable to most people. It's also a lot of fun. I'm not sure if I want to do this one as a movie, as it's written, or as a limited series. But again, I don't think you can do this one until you do all the other Everly Heights stories, because this provides an end game of sorts to all of the stories that are set up in all the other Everly Heights scripts and would be developed in those individual series. So, if Everly Heights is a matrix, the start is very special, and then the end is curtain call. And Deborah in the chat room says, I'm loving the complexity because characters and dialogue is my jam. There's a lot of complexity here, and I've been told that dialogue is my specialty, so hopefully that works out too. It's also an interesting story because, I didn't really have a firm plan for this one beyond Cornerstone Theater is under threat and this is the last day to save it. But then I went and I made spreadsheets of every setting I'd created for Everly Heights up to that point, every character, some new characters and some new settings in the mix there. And then I actually used a random number generator to parse the spreadsheet and give me all my scenes. And now I had, for all these characters, I had what had happened in scripts they had appeared in, or for new characters, I had character sheets I had made for them. So it wasn't that hard. but it was kind of like I had to figure out the story as I went. And, you know, I basically, there's 4 acts in it. For every act, I rolled a new set of scenes. So it was very much like improv in the sense that I didn't know what was going to happen to any of these characters. I mean, I knew that there were witches who could cast actual spells, but I didn't know how that would interact with, say, the old creepy guy who runs the bar, who gets involved in his own thing. Like, there's a lot going on with this one. It's very complicated, but I think after about a year of rewrites, it finally works. Now, as far as inspirations, this is inspired by the most recent series that came to mind was Welcome to Flatch that you might have seen on Fox. Like the sitcom Welcome to Flatch, Curtain Call is a story about a small town. It explores how the home of the arts lost itself in the wake of the opioid epidemic, an issue that affects Wheeling, West Virginia, where I grew up. Like, I can't go a week without hearing about someone I went to high school with passing away from a drug overdose, which it's really sad, but it's something I definitely explore in this script. And then the script also calls back to the first 2 big parts I ever had, which was Under Milkwood at Towngate Theater and Our Town at Wheeling Park High School, where I went to high school. You know, it's inspired by these plays where there's a ton of characters, and it's about the main character of the play is the town. It's not even like the protagonist of the story. The main character is the town, and it's really telling the story of the town and how the town changes over time. Now, I'd say the entire Everly Heights universe is telling that story, but this is the end game. This is where you find out how it all shakes out. Everything from, you know, the failing theater, to Jeremy, who went off to Hollywood to make a career for himself, to Nat, who left town after she realized that her gangster father was going to have her killed. You know, all these various plot threads come together in Curtain Call. So it's very, very exciting for me. And Curtain Call, as much as I love the story and I think it's a great story, you can't tell the end until you've told the rest, which is why we need to start, right? We need to tell the first story. We had 2 finalists because I put out a general call of interest last summer, and then I had people vote on pitch decks to decide which story we were going to go with first. So the 2 finalists are Fanboy and Very Special. And it was about 40 or so people voted on these. I'm really excited about both of them. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and announce the one we're doing first. And that is, drumroll please, it's Very Special. Very Special. Yeah, it was a very tight race, but as far as votes went, Fanboy got a few more votes, but Very Special had more accolades from contest, where Fanboy only has like 1 quarterfinalist thing, I think. So I was like, you know what? Very Special, simpler. It'll be a good testing, the proof of concept, and then we can kind of move on from there. It's also something that I can very quickly get writers engaged on, because I want writers to be involved with this too. And, you know, in the short term, I thought, why don't we write parody 90s commercials to go into the pilot episode of Very Special to kind of hit the vibe more. And then, you know, once we get done with the pilot, we're going to be making more episodes, right? So then I can bring all those writers in to help me write new episodes. And you know, any creative project is better with more creative people on it. So I'm very, very excited about this. It's a lot of fun. It's very funny. Plenty of 90s references without being too cloying about it. And I'm probably going to be voicing at least 2 of the characters. But there's a lot of opportunity for other voice artists to get involved too, for sure. But since we're going to be spending a lot of time with the specials, I figured, why don't we go ahead and introduce you to the specials. So first up, the Special Family. And the patriarch of the Special Family is Michael Special. He's the theatrical dad. He's the director of Cornerstone Theater, and he's a board member for the Everly Heights Arts Board, which is a very important organization throughout all the scripts. He lives life like it's a curtain call. He's a very big, broad, wacky character, but I have a lot of fun writing him and playing him. I'm probably going to be playing him. Might not be. We'll see. And then next up is his wife, Jennifer Special, and she's sort of a new age mom, right? She's a new age hippie, and when she isn't holding the family together, she helps Michael build sets at Cornerstone Theater and paints abstract art in the garage, which, no spoilers, but that'll become important later, her artwork in the garage. Oh, Deborah over in the chat room says Michael Special is a drama king. That is absolutely the best way to describe Michael Special. All right, and then Zara Special, the confused teen, she's actually the main character of the pilot episode. She's excited about high school since it'll give her a chance to reinvent herself. Will she make it as a popular girl, or is she doomed to live life on the fringe? And this isn't a spoiler, I've kind of already said it. This is the pilot episode of Very Special. Is the story of how Zara Special goes into high school wanting to be a mean girl and comes out of her first day as Daria. Mean girl / Mallory from Family Ties, and comes out as Daria, basically signifying that transition from 80s to 90s teenage girl, right? And then Ricky Special, I refer to as the tight-ass son. He's a business-minded teen who longs for the cocaine-fueled glory days of the 1980s. He's embarrassed by his hippie parents and rebels by embracing his inner Ronald Reagan. And like I said, Very Special, the starting point is basically Family Ties. So you can consider Ricky Special sort of the Alex P. Keaton, the conservative son who goes up against the hippie parents. And then last but not least, for the main cast is Abby Special. She's, the snarky sitcom kid, right? The precocious know-it-all. Too smart for her age, with a keen awareness of the sitcom tropes playing out around her. Abby's hopped up on Nickelodeon 90s kids power propaganda too. So Abby's sort of the breaking the fourth wall character where it's never as cheesy as this, but she almost turns to the camera and she's like, can you believe we used to think this was quality sitcom programming or humor? She, like I said, she's the most metatextually aware of the specials. I don't know if that'll come into play though. We'll see as we develop more episodes, right? There's also a great cast of supporting characters here that I'll run through here. By the way, all of these character slides that I'm showing off, these aren't permanent designs, but these are all generated using the tools I built in Stable Diffusion to generate characters. Okay, so as far as supporting characters, first up is the Sparkles, and these are, the mean girls. Eventually in Curtain Call, they'll grow up to be the town witches, but when they're teenagers, they're the town mean girls. Beatrix, Veronica, and Rebecca are the most popular girls at Everly Heights High School, which means they alone hold the power to make or break Zara's freshman year. So they are very important in the first episode, as you can imagine. And then, and I hope I phrased this right and I don't offend anybody, but this is a very particular kind of kid I grew up with in Wheeling in the 90s. And that's a Cinnamon Slush, and I call him the Wannagy. He's Ricky's best friend. His real name is Philip Simonson, but he goes by Cinnamon Slush. He's a former computer nerd who embraces hip-hop culture despite his suburban upbringing. So I knew a ton of these guys growing up in Wheeling, and I think really it came down to sort of like almost a class thing. Like, you didn't see a lot of rich kids taking on the tropes of 90s hip-hop in my high school, but you saw a lot of poor kids doing it. And I think it was just because that aesthetic and the messaging was pretty empowering for people who felt like they hadn't got, a fair shake in life. And I think, that idea transcends racial boundaries, but kind of goes against taste these days too, right? But I thought it would be very interesting to explore this character who was, is white bread as they come, trying to claim hip-hop culture as his own. And obviously, as we would continue forward, there would probably be an episode dealing directly with that I would get all due input from, people from various, cultures before I went into. But just like the basic frame of the idea of the character is in this. He's also, if you think of the Seth Green character in Can't Hardly Wait, he's very much inspired by that sort of trope. And next up and we've heard this name before, is Nosloo the Great, the troll next door. Not too much to be said about Nosloo that hasn't been said already. He's a dark troll wizard from another dimension who lives next door to the specials with Jim Colvin, right? And as you'll see by the end of the Nosloo pilot, he's always trying to invent something to send himself home. And eventually, this will be a future episode, obviously, but the specials find out that Nosloo exists, and he becomes sort of like the Wilson from Home Improvement, the elder neighbor, or the Mr. Feeney from Boy Meets World, the elder neighbor that the kids go to for advice to solve their problem of the week. And when he shows up in Very Special, it's many people say it's their favorite part of the script because it comes so out of nowhere. Obviously, the Nosloo the Great pilot tells you where he came from. But he's a really fun character. I really love him. I can't wait to see more of him in Very Special. Then we have Jerome Bentley, the bully. Basically, this is more or less your typical 80s, 90s TV film high school bully. I don't think there's much left to say about that beyond the fact that, very strangely, the reason the bully comes after one of the main characters is because one of the main characters is a teenager who helps an adult out doing their taxes. And there's some problems that arise. We'll leave it at that. And last but not least is Mr. Matheson. This is another character I'll probably be playing. I'll give you a preview of the voice right now. Hi, I'm Mr. Matheson. So that's Mr. Matheson. He's Ricky Special's math teacher. And he's also the person that Ricky goes to advice in for his tax preparing business. He's a really fun side character. He gets a lot of play in this one, and he gets a lot more developed actually in Kids Like Us and Curtain Call. He's actually a main character, I would say, in Curtain Call. But very fun character to write, to play, all that stuff. Very excited to get Very Special off the ground. I will say that, as we move forward here, it's going to start happening really quick. I'm going to be trying to do 1 or 2 streams a week. If you're on the mailing list, I'm going to be reaching out like it's go time for Everly Heights and Very Special. But if you want to get involved, you can go over to everlyheights.tv, and down at the bottom, there's a Google form you can fill out. Give me your information. Let me know how you'd like to be involved. And I'm going to be sending out a big mailing to the mailing list later this week, sending you an invite to the Discord server, sending out sides for actors. Stuff is coming down quick. You need to go to everlyheights.tv and fill out the form to be involved. Like I said, I'm looking for anyone who wants to be involved, whether you're a musician, an illustrator, a voice actor, someone who's doing a lot of this stuff with Stable Diffusion and AI artwork already who can help me, because everyone's kind of learning it on their feet right now, but I am too. Having someone to bounce ideas off of wouldn't be bad. If you want to be involved in any way, fill out this form and you'll get on the list to know where we go next. I'll also say that if you're from Wheeling or have a connection to the town, I'd love to hear from you too. As we do these live streams where I go through the technical and creative process, I'd love to have a little segment where maybe I touch a little bit on the actual Everly Heights Wheeling. And if you want to send in your memories about Wheeling, you can be included in that. You can shoot me an email at billmeeks@everlyheights.tv. Overall, let me come back full screen here. I'm just really excited about doing this. This has been a project that's been 2 or 3 years in the making for me, behind the scenes, writing, planning, plotting. And, back in October, November, as AI art generation was getting open sourced and out there, I realized, this is a tool I can use to make my dreams come true. And I really hope that you'll join me along the way to learn how to make your own dreams come true, and maybe even, jump in and help me make my dreams come true too. Either way, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're all going to learn a lot together. I'm really, really excited about Everly Heights. I'm really excited to get this off the ground after so many years of plotting and planning. It's just very, very special. it's very special. Right. As for me, you can follow me online. I'm at Bill Meeks pretty much everywhere. My site is billmeeks.com. And you can always email me, billmeeks@everlyheights.tv, if you want to get involved, if you have any ideas, if you want to just say, hey, I'm always lonely. So, you know, I appreciate emails every once in a while. But that's enough for episode 1. That's the prospectus. And next time, we're going to get into the gritty details. Deborah Kerr in the chat room says, good stream. Looking forward to this YouTube series. I am too, for sure. And again, I want to thank Streann Studio for sponsoring this YouTube series. If you go to everlyheights.tv, you can click on the Streann Studio banner and take a free ride on me for the Streann Studio product. It's really great for making online content like you're watching right now. All right, how do I end this? You know, I just realized I don't think I ever came up with a way to end this. Oh, wait, no. Of course, you can follow me at youtube.com/@BillMeeksLA for this continuing series and live stream series. And just subscribe over there anyway. I could use some more followers. And again, I want to thank you for joining me today. And I can't wait to share more about Everly Heights and how I'm using the latest AI technology to bring my creative dreams to life. So we'll see you next time. We are not starting.